This panel is going to be a special oral history of Mr. Wardell Quezergue. Wardell is truly one of the greatest unsung arrangers and producers in New Orleans has ever had. His work is vast and all over the place. He's done everything from the House Party record with Dave Bartholomew to doing Teasing You, Barefooting, Mr. Big Stuff, and of course the other flip for that session was Groove Me. He helped put Malco Records on the map by keeping them alive when they weren't going anywhere. He's been involved with such labels as NOLA, Worry Burley, Big Q. And just to give you an idea of how important his work is, this summer he's going to be a tribute to him at the Lincoln Center as part of the Lincoln Center Festival this afternoon. So let's hear it first to the man of the hour, Mr. Wardell Quezergue.
Thank you.
The person on my immediate left comes from a New Orleans musical family, a very big tradition here. His father was Albert Papa French. His brother is the bass player George French. This gentleman started out in high school doing sessions. He played with people like Frogman Henry at the Joy Tavern, if I remember. He's played with numerous other people. He was used a lot by Dave Bartholomew on early sessions in the late 50s and early 60s. He turned down a job with Fats Domino, but he's here today. He has his own group. Excellent drummer. This is Mr. Bob French, and also a WWOZ disc jockey. And sitting next to him is a gentleman who's a walking encyclopedia of New Orleans sessions. He's been playing for quite a few years. He, at age 15 to 16, was doing A&R work, producing and arranging for such labels as Rick, Ron, Ace, Rex. He cut such amazing guitar mingling instrumentals as Storm Warning. He also cut some great proto-garage records such as Ronnie and the Delinquents, Bad Neighborhood, also the classic Morgus the Magnificent, Jerry Burns' Lights Out he wrote. Through the years, he went out to LA and developed a whole nother thing as Dr. John, but he's back here to help moderate this panel too. Let's hear it from Mr. Mac Rebennack. It was Dr. John. And I'm going to do like what every good producer should do, is just get out the way, shut up, and let them talk. Let them start.
Why the hell are you looking at me?
I'm waiting for Dr. John.
I put the Dave Bartholomew on you. Why y'all looking at me? I'm very privileged to be here today because I have so much respect for Wardell Quezergue, and that's from the bottom of my heart. The man has done everything there is to do musically in this city and throughout the world. His music has been heard. And I'm glad finally he's going to be honored like he should be honored, you know? The things that happen here in New Orleans, I could go on for hours that are not right. But usually they wait till somebody die, then they want to tell you about how great they are. Snooks died about a month ago. They were playing this CD continuously on the radio, even on the radio station that I'm on. And I told him, you know, it's a drag, it's all right. But, you know, he can't make any money now, he's dead. Why didn't y'all do this when he was alive? Okay? And then the next week, Eddie Bo died, and they just played hours and hours. I said, you know, give Bo his props, but you don't have to play this stuff now because he ain't going to make another nickel unless he's starting the band wherever he's at. You know, I mean, you know, give it to him while they can get it. This man here, I've been knowing him for a long time. I admit that. And yeah, you know, because you're giving me hell all the time. It's like, hello. I said, hello, this is Mac. And then he goes on and on talking. He just got through talking bad about me about half an hour ago. I was trying to find out where he was, and he called me some nice names. But if he doesn't talk to me like that, I think he'd stop liking me, you know. But you would never find another one like this. When they made him, they threw away all the moles. You know, I mean, talent-wise, personality-wise, and he has a memory. When we hang out, we make it a priority to hang out some. When we hang out, and he brings back things like happened 50 years ago. I said, how can you remember these things? He said, because I got a good mind. I think he lost his mind some years ago. But anyway, he's one of the if you can't take the truth, don't talk to Mac Rebennack or Bob French, because I'll tell you like it is. And I got that from him. If you can't tell the truth, keep your damn mouth shut. Okay? And it's an honor to be his friend. And we try to talk almost every day, but sometimes he avoids me, let the machine catch it, and he'll call me back when he feels like talking. But since he's a star, I'll let him do that, okay? Any retaliation?
Well, I ain't gonna get into retaliation mode, but I tell you what. Like deep down, I dig Bob for a long time. I always like to cap on him because that's a New Orleans tradition. If we don't cap on somebody, we don't care about them. And if we don't have a way of insulting each other that's below the belt, we really don't care about them too much. And that's just part of our nature. And there's some exceptions to the rule, and I'm sitting right next to one of them. And people call him the Creole Beethoven. Personally, I like to call him what he always called me, which is Buck. That makes me feel good because Wardell Quezergue is a true treasure of this city. There ain't nobody like Wardell Quezergue. He done wrote arrangements. People don't have a clue. Like the string thing he wrote for Aaron Neville when Aaron cut Mona Lisa with just strings. And I remember Joel Dawn hired him, and I heard the story later. He asked Wardell, he said, well, what kind of keyboard do you need at the hotel room? And Wardell said, I don't need nothing. I just need this, and pulled out a tuning fork. And Joel Dawn said, well, what is that? And he says, that's all I need. That's Wardell. He can do more with less than anybody that ever did charts here. You know, his charts have always like helped records and songs and artists make a blend. It's like the things he did with Big Chief. There was a great arranger in New York, Slide Hampton, and Slide always, I played him the record of Big Chief. I had no idea. Man, he says, man, he could have wrote for bass, he could have wrote for anybody, but this is some fresh, new music. And that's coming from a great arranger too, and without even knowing Wardell. He never met him. But this is the kind of love people has amongst each other that appreciates what's did. And people don't know, like on the record of Big Chief by Professor Longhair, Wardell's brother played percussion on that with Smokey Johnson. I was very fortunate to play the guitar on that session, but Longhead didn't ever understand about a big horn section or any of that. And the whole session threw him a curvature of the mind.
Big word.
And he got up and left after the session was over. He figured he played. Nobody asked him to sing nothing. He was gone. And Earl King had to sing the song and whistle the part that was for Longhead to do. And it was just Cosmo's studio at the time couldn't handle all of everything because of mic situations, and that's just how things was in those days. Cosmo Mateus, who ran the studio, he was one of them rare guys too. Like, but Wardell took the stuff. Whether I mentioned the record he did with Dave Bartholomew, but there's another record that Wardell did for Dave Bartholomew back in the game with Warren Bell and some great players on it. What's the name of that song that with Rhapsody for alto or something like that?
Concerto for alto.
That song. If you ever heard, I don't even know the name of the record, but I know it was a
I think it's House Party.
House Party, that's the one. Man, I wouldn't have remembered that, but it was one of those classic records that at the time, there wasn't no music like that out there. It was just something that Wardell just did a thing, that's what he does. Wardell did so much music. I mean, he's got new records coming out right now. He's got new stuff that he's doing all the time that is representative of what he's about. And with that, I'm gonna turn you over to my partner, Wardell Quzergue.
Well, Doc, I didn't bring no change with me, so I'm gonna have to owe you that. But there's no greater guy in my book than Mac Rebennack. I'm gonna tell you why. He's unselfish, and like he said earlier, if you want to be right, he's right with you. If you want to be wrong, watch out, because he doesn't hold his tongue about things, you know, and he's a brave man. I told him one time, there's a lady in New York, and that reminds me of Doc. Her name is Faye, and she's the widower of Joel Dawn. And those are two people, man, if I ever walk in New York City with them, I'm going to walk about 5 paces away because they don't hold their tongue. That lady, man, she was in New York one time and she was walking. Of course, I wasn't there, but I heard about it. She was walking and she have a rod down her back. It's, you know, she can't bend or anything like that. So she was looking for a cab and she hailed the cab, and here comes a guy that jumped in the cab and she pulled him out. I said, in New York? Yeah, man. But these are the kind of people I ran across, are honest people, you know, and it can't be any more honest than Doc. Bob French, I never had the opportunity to work with him, great drummer, but I worked with his brother George French, and of course his father. I did a couple of things with his father and all of that. But they got so many great family musicians in town, you know. They all passed away, like Bob said. It's too bad that they don't have the credits when they're alive, you know, to get the credits that they deserve here. Now getting back to Dr. John. Dr. John, you got to be careful what you say in front of him, because I think he's got a computer in his body that he forgets. He doesn't forget. He remembers things about me and things that we done in 1956, and I can't remember the things I did last week. They say, man, yeah, you remember this, you remember that? I said, no. And then when he started talking about that talk that he used, man, him and shoot, who's that? It's just his great friends of mine. I've got to guess who I'm talking about. But him and what is the drummer name? Smokey Johnson, man. He's another one. Smokey Johnson was on that session with Doctor on the Big Chief. He played so hard that his thumb and forefinger was bleeding. He hit the drum so hard, and they had to patch his hand so it won't bleed on the sticks. Do you remember who played bass on that?
I was trying to think, but it was most of the Raw Dukes Rhythm Band, but it wasn't Otis DeVerney, and I know who it wasn't, but it was an upright bass player, but it wasn't Mitchell. And it wasn't.
Who's that bass player that played with Dave? Played upright.
Frank
That wasn't
Fields?
him? That wasn't him?
No, that wasn't Frank Fields.
No?
Nope.
See what
I could picture it. No, I was sitting right by him. That's why I really remember the bass player. I can't remember which one it was. And it wasn't.
it wasn't French.
No. It was an upright player that played like really tasty, like.
It wasn't Chuck.
No,
Bailey?
it wasn't Chuck, and it wasn't. It's easy to think of who it wasn't on that day. If we go through the list, we'd probably come up with who it was.
You sound like
It
me now.
wasn't Eustace Gilliamy. It was. I'm trying to think now. Before.
Yeah, that's right. How you call? You must be from the 7th Ward. How you call it?
Man, Doc
Heard
is
that in
from
a
every
long
ward. Doc, you're right. But anyway, getting back to Professor Lawn here, when he played the piano, you can always tell what piano he played on because he had a habit of hitting the piano a leg with his leg, you know. And every time he played a piano, you knew it was him because he had splinters in the legs of the piano. I said, gee whiz, I said, man, I hope I never get him mad so he can kick me. Because he'll break a bone. And I remember that session that we had to tie his hand behind his back because he played the whole thing with his left hand. And I said, man, and that was the first time I met him. You know, he had me more frightened of him than he was of me. But these are things that I remember about a whole lot of sessions. That session with that he was talking about with Aaron Neville. I remember we was in the studio with that, and he sang Mona Lisa, one take, and he had a music stand with Nat King Cole's picture on the stand, and as he was singing, he's watching the picture, you know. So we went through the whole song. After we finished the cut, it was very quiet in the studio. Then all of a sudden, the violin players, cellos, and all that start hitting a thing with the bows on the string. Man, I never knew what that was. You know, I said, man, I wonder if I did something wrong, man. I thought they could use that as a bow and arrow and shoot it at me or something. You know? But the guy said, man, that is how they appreciate a composer's work or arranger's work when they do something like that. So I got schooled into that. String players, very nice to work with, but they're very odd. the first session I did with strings, and did I know about strings then? I put the music on the stand, and this was one of my first arrangements with strings, so it was unison, which means, everybody's playing the same notes, and everything has no first, no second, no third. But I had the parts written, first violin, second violin, viola, cello. So we started rehearsing the tune, and one of the guys was sitting down, he wasn't playing. So I stopped the band, and I counted off again. I thought maybe he was tone deaf, he couldn't hear what I was doing. So I counted a little louder, We started playing, he didn't play again. I said, so one of the guys came up and said, you know why the guy's not playing? Because you dishonored him. I said, man, no, you embarrassed him. I said, why, man? I didn't even speak to the man. How can I embarrass someone that I never spoke to? You know what he told me? He said, man, you know what you did? You put the second violin part on his stand, and he happened to be the concert master of the New Orleans Symphony. Oh. So he will not play that second part until they change to put the first part on. I said, but what's the difference? It's in unison. He said, but when you have first violin on there and you gave him the second part, he was dishonored. So every time, from then on, whenever I do strings, I give it to the contractor and let him.
Yeah, bro. I go over there.
It take me one time to get to know something. And I remember also about Dr. John one time, man. We was coming up, we was in some hotel in New Orleans, and I was on the coming up on an up violin, and he was coming, not that violin, escalator. I got strings on my mind already. Anyway, I think string players, man, I think they got a little kooky, man, because playing all their life with this string under their chin, kind of make the vibration of the brains fiddle around. And I'm not saying that to dishonor them, but I just believe that's what it is. They're just odd, but they're nice, though. Not yet, kid. I haven't gotten the notification yet. All right, do this, well, then I'll do it. But anyway, and then I was coming up the escalator, and Dr. John was coming the down elevator. He jumped the daggone partition between the elevators and said, what did you do with this Mona Lisa? He said, there's a card in there, man. What card is that? I said, darn, Jack. I said, I don't know, man, what you talking about, man. I had to run at my house after that and see what he's talking about. But he's got a keen ear, man. That's what I love about Doc. He's just a nice man. And please believe me, he's one of the honest musicians in the world, not New Orleans, in the world. Because he do not, if something is wrong, he will let you know. And man, with the kind of language that he used, and I don't mean vulgarity, I'm talking about when he talk about this and he talk about that, half of the time I need a dictionary, a New Orleans dictionary at that, to get what he mean about that, man. But I love you all, I really do. Please believe that. And as far as George French and Bob French and his father, I came up with, well, not with Bob because he's a couple of years older than me, but his father. But I'm talking about his father. I didn't know Bob.
I beg your pardon.
It ain't my fault, man.
You're going to make me tell you, I used to call him Mr. Quzergue. No, this is the honest to God's truth, because he played in a band, the Raw Dukes of Rhythm. Do I know what I'm talking about?
No, they're from New York, man.
No. You, Hamp, and a whole bunch of other folks. And see, he's a ranger. You know about the arranging, but he played an instrument. You know what instrument he played, Doc? Mm-hmm. I know. What instrument did you remember back that far? What instrument? He played trumpet. He was a trumpet player. And then I heard him play many nights. They played all the balls and all the dances and stuff when I was in high school. And then a little time went on, and they're talking about Wardell, the arranger. I say, what Wardell? They're talking about Wardell Q. See, some of them couldn't say Quezergue, so they were Wardell Q. That is your nickname.
What, Quezergue? That's my real name.
No, Q. See, he's gotten older now. Now he wants to be a damn comedian. You just stick to writing the music. You do that well. And the wonderful thing about it is, as he gets older, he gets better and better. And as we say in New Orleans, more better.
You know, there's a lot of session Wardell did that wasn't hit records. That was my favorite sessions he ever did. There was some sessions with Danny White, even though some of them sold some records. But there's a lot of records that he did that because it was with a label that was kind of lame. Didn't know how to promote it, or a small label that just couldn't compete with the big companies and all of that. And I look at some of the stuff that happened back in the game where there was a thing and it was like big companies somewhere else either bought masters from here, like I'm looking at Willie T. Well, Wardell did Teasing You for Willie. But there's a lot of records. Atlantic Records bought that record. It wasn't did for Atlantic Records. But there's always been that kind of side to the story. But there's also the sad side to that story, which is a lot of artists, like when you did that Loan Me Your Handkerchief and the other song with Danny White.
Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye.
Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye. I'll read some. Man, those were classic sessions of a New Orleans brand that, had they been with somebody good, could have been big national record. But every now and then, because at some point when he was doing this stuff with Malico Records, like around the time King Floyd and all of that, he did the Jackie Moore record, Misty Blue.
Yeah.
And those were records that were classics of what later a lot of other arrangers was copying that style of arranging, and it was like we always got clipped out the real money on somebody else. It's like the companies would come in here when somebody had a hit, and they cut a lot of stuff. And very few of the people knew what they was doing. They want a record to sound like the one that was a hit. You don't hire Wardell Quzergue to do something like something. He's gonna write what he's gonna write, and it's gonna be the right thing. This is the difference where people that don't understand what they're dealing with and who they're dealing with should let what Bob French said a little while ago. You got to let the people do what they do, or they ain't gonna get a chance to do it. And I can say there was so many sessions like that. Yeah. There was people, Wardell probably be living on the life side of the rich and the wealthy right now, had he got the money for stuff that he wrote. Do you know how many arrangements that Wardell got shorted on the money for even writing the arrangements?
I remember that much.
Good. I'm very grateful to hear you say that, Wardell.
None.
Go ahead.
A song, anyway.
But it's like, listen, listen, I'm not talking about all of them, but I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff that as a music community, New Orleans never had anybody to represent us as a music business lawyer. Even to the people that made money here, got stiffed out of a lot of money. The lace went left. The money was funny. The change was strange. Everything was wrong here because there was nobody to represent anybody.
Right.
And it's been like a tradition that it's like politics here. All of this stuff ain't cool. We gotta stick to what we can do. And what the musicians do, we play music. And if we don't do that, what are we on the planet for? I was talking to George Davis, because he said it ain't my fault earlier, and when George Davis, George French, Smokey, and Kimball, I think it was, they did It Ain't My Fault, right?
Yeah, right.
And when that session happened, if you know how many people is used, It Ain't My Fault, whether it was hip-hop kids, he don't see no money for none of that. And he's been fighting for the money for an awful, awful, awful long time. This is like, and I say this because there's a lot of people here, maybe somebody's a lawyer, somebody that could help him get his money. This, look, I ain't jiving you. It's like this. Get him his money while he's breathing. Don't, expect the money to fall on somebody to pay for their burial. I think that's the kind of job, my grandmother used to say, don't send flowers to the dead, send a poor children some money instead. Well, it's the same kind of principle, except we got to do stuff to keep stuff where people's alive. And Bob made a nice point of this about Eddie Bowe and Snooks, but it's been going on. It's whether you look at Willie T, whether Earl Turbin, all of the guys, there was so many strings of musicians that come out of New Orleans that got beat. It's a long, ongoing saga. I just saw somebody in the streets coming over here, and they had a Specialty Records T-shirt on, and I said, that's the only company that ever paid me. And I said, writing for Venice Music, was it that specialty shirt? Okay, well, I'm glad you had it on. I wouldn't even thought about it. But Art Group and that company was the only damn company that paid us any royalties at all. I worked for a lot of record companies, and this is what I got for money, nothing. And I think that's the Professor Long had. Sam had to fight after he was gone. But this is the way it's been here. Wardell has been one of them guys that will never say nothing negative about nobody. I tell you, probably there ain't nobody I know that's got more of an up-hip thing to his spirit than Wardell Quzergue. I don't care what just went down, Wardell's gonna say something nice. I call him up sometimes and say, Wardell, you remember this? And it's something real bad. It's some bad crap. I'm talking the real sweetheart stuff. And I can badmouth somebody. And that's part of my nature. But
I agree.
I'm glad you did, Bob. But he'll always find a good side to it all. And you can't beat that.
Bob, talk about the drums. Your family goes back centuries. What were your New Orleans is known for drummers and the back people?
I hear that voice.
Yeah, that's Marty.
Who?
Marty.
Oh, Marty Mose. I didn't see you, doctor. He's got a hip name now. He's Doctor Marty.
Well, they're going to make him Dr. Quzergue next.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, New Orleans has always been a drummer city. And we go back to Louis Barbrand, Paul Barbrand. Everybody knew about Paul because Paul wrote the Bourbon Street Parade and a couple other tunes and had hits. And Paul was older than Louis, but drummers, of all the drummers in the world, Louis Barbrand was the greatest New Orleans drummer who played New Orleans jazz, as far as I'm concerned. You know, we all have our favorites, but his brother was a good drummer, he was a good writer. But Louis Barbrand, I was around him for a greater part of my younger life because he played in the band that my daddy played in. And so I'd go on a gig with him. I'd drive my daddy to the gig. I drive the band. I used to drive the bus when I was 16, 17 years old. They had an old school bus, old raggedy school bus that Papa Celestin had when he died. My daddy got the bus because Miss Celestin was still living. And I used to go drive the bus up and down Alabama, Mississippi, all those great places to play back in those days. When you were leaving home, you say, well, I hope I see my home again. Back home. I could tell you some stories. So can he, because I think he has a record in New Orleans for the most arrests back in the days when he was going places he wasn't supposed to go, like the Dewdrop. How many weekends you went to jail?
I didn't count them.
He'd get arrested every weekend at the Dewdrop, and then after a while, they didn't even have to ask, just get in the car. They knew it, they'd write it up, they had everything. But he wanted to hang out with the New Orleans musicians, and the New Orleans musicians he wanted to hang out with all were around in and out of the Dewdrop, you know. And so he was taught by, and we're gonna talk about the drummers, Mo. He was taught by a guy who came from a musical family. His name was what? They called him Papoose. What was his real name?
Walter Papoose Nelson, yeah.
What was his last name?
Nelson.
Nelson. And from that family, there's a bunch of musicians that are playing now that came from that family. Little guy by the name of Trombone Shorty, his brother James Andrew. I mean, they all were musicians. There were some more, but anyway, he was taught by this man. He was coming in the hood before it was popular to come into the hood, you know. And they said he knocked on the door to go get a lesson one day. I know this because he told me, and I know it's the truth. And Papoose' sister answered the door. He said, "What you doing there, white boy?" You know, this is way back in the game. And Papoose heard him and said, "Who you talking to?" Say, "This white boy out here at the door. Somebody's coming to get a lesson." Say, "Let him in." Say, "That's Mac. He's all right." So she knew who he was, and he would go and practice. And I'm not gonna tell him the other stuff, but got some stuff y'all don't want to hear about. But anyway, he learned how to play between Papoose and the devil.
Don't call him the devil, right?
That was his nickname. Isn't that what y'all called him?
Not me. I called him Beak.
Beak.
Roy Montrell.
Roy Montrell. The cats in the band, he played with Fats until he died. Matter of fact, he died across the water when he was with Fats. But Roy was one of a kind, but he was a heck of a guitar player. So was Papoose. But he learned from people like that. And he was not afraid to go in the hood back in them days, where there were a lot of people, they wouldn't have got anywhere near the hood. They'd step on the gas and drive 80 miles an hour and 35 miles an hour. Nobody was going to do them anything. But anyway, talking about him as a person, he always hung with us. And we still hanging together. But the drummers, let's go. Buddy Williams played for years with Tommy Risley and a bunch of other people. He was one of the best shuffling drummers I ever heard in my life. Can I get an amen? Amen. Yeah. He could shuffle, all right? Then we had James Black, a genius. I mean, we use that word, he was a genius. And Mac had the very much the privilege of having James in his band. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell any James story?
No, I'm gonna leave that to another time.
Yeah,
But
'cause
I want to mention something while you're talking about drummers, because I was talking to Russell Igbo the other night, and we were talking about all the
who?
drummers.
What Russell?
The alto player. He used to play with Google Live.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, we were talking about drummers that nobody even thinks about that were great drummers from New Orleans, like Tanu
Played with the Fast Domino.
and Snow. As off the hook as Snow was, he contributed a lot of hip stuff to.
I got a Snow story.
Okay.
You probably heard this. We all know each other, and drummers in this town, they all get along. People say, well, all the drummers get along because we don't play on the same bandstand. Hello. Dinah Washington was in town, and Snow had, you know what I'm about to say, and he had the gig playing, and the lights were low, and she could sing. She could sing the blues, and she was singing, and it was like, whew, it was just, nobody was saying the word. And it got so, he was playing the drums, and she was singing, it got good to him, and he just out of the blue said, "Sing, bitch." See, he started laughing. He knows about this, He was a character. He was definitely a character, but he could play. Now, who else? Forgotten.
Oh, listen,
Honey Boy.
Honey Boy Otis, yeah.
Thank you.
I saw Honey Boy at Fathead's Memorial recently, but there's a lot of guys like Honey Boy Otis. It's like, who?
Hungry. Thank you very much.
Chuck, listen, when Earl Palmer, who we hadn't mentioned up to this point, left New Orleans to go to work for Eddie Messner in California, after they tried June Gardner, who's another killer drummer we ain't mentioned,
Right.
and that's who I thought was gonna get Earl Palmer job.
Right. Why
And
not?
then, he's in the next little crew. The way I look at it, is like Smokey and Boudreaux came up studying with Honey Boy,
Play together every day.
and they would be over there. But the fact of the matter is, all these guys started from, 'cause the reason Hungry got the job of Earl Palmer's was that he played a little funky. He didn't play like nobody else. He was from the alley right behind the parish, and he just was a ratty drummer and had a trick left hand and a trick right foot where he could keep a bass drum pounding flying. And that was, he had a trick foot. He wouldn't tell no drummers back when he was alive then. But he got the name Hungry because he liked to eat double portions of everything for breakfast. But there was a lot of them kind of drummers. Junie Boy came up later. But there was a strings of drummers. You can't break them up.
And the good thing about the drummer thing was a lot of people, stars, Sam Cooke included, bunch of people, they all came to New Orleans and hired drummers. I could name you a whole bunch of stars with New Orleans drummers in the band. And it's still going on. They come and say, well, ain't nobody gonna play it like them, so let's go down there and get one of them. Kept them working. You got something to say? You got something to say, Wardell?
Oh, yeah, so we were talking about drummers. You mentioned something about drummers and on stage, and it brought up something in my mind with Smokey Johnson. When I had the Royal Dukes of Rhythm, he was in the audience. It was a dance, And he said, hey, Quiz, let me play a couple of songs with you. I said, okay, smoke. He said, I'm going to go up there and smoke them. I said, go ahead and smoke, my friend. So we played a song, man. During the middle of the song, the stage was catching fire. And something, one electric plug must have hit the something and it started smoking. And cat came off the band there and said, see that what I say, hey, Quiz? I had him smoking. Smoking Johnson, boy, was the king.
That's the first time I heard. Did I forget anybody, Marty?
I know we forgot a bunch of cats.
Yeah,
like
but
that,
Blackwell was another.
Edward Blackwell, his brother.
Leo Morris.
Well,
He's not Leo Morris anymore. He's not
I
there.
still gonna call his ass Leo Morris, but most of the planet call him Idris Muhammad, and that's all right, because I knew him when he was Leo. I always
And his brother.
his brother, and don't forget Blackwell's brother.
I didn't know him.
He's a bad drummer
I
too.
didn't know him.
There was a
all
lot of
you
bad-
people are older than me.
Yeah,
You, Mr.
yeah.
Mac. You,
Yes.
Mr.
We're
Quzergue.
all older than you.
Yes, you are.
The whole audience is older than you.
No, you
boy.
too. You too. You too, Mac. You and
yeah,
Mr. Q.
Hey, well, you know, the best time of my life was working with Smokey and your brother with Wardell. I can remember do the gig with Wardell somewhere, whether it was a session or just a gig with the Raw Dukes. And that run over, and your brother was playing with Willie T's band after the gig over on St. Bernard. I go catch them and give you an idea how much influence that the drummers was having. There was a little drummer used to play with Willie T at that time on St. Bernard, way back then. And when it was, I don't even think it was Willie T and the Gators. Whatever they was at the time, the little drummer that was playing with Bad Cat. But I can't ever think of this kid's name, but
Who?
no, it's before him. I can't think right now, but the cat, they were playing music that later became called fusion jazz, except it wasn't. It was like they'd play a song and they'd play it funky, and then they'd play it a little out jazz, and then they'd play it. They took music to a level of that something else happened. But it was like, we always was like, look, I mean, my heart was saying, hey, this is something fresh. And all the Cannonball Adderley's band was hanging around that. And they was, be quite frank, they was ripping Willie off.
They were stealing.
Well, that's what I call ripping somebody off. Listen, whether you want to call it boosting or whatever name you want to call it, there's a lot of nice words for that. But I remember because I was getting ready to be shipped out of New Orleans, but working with Wardell, that was like so special. It was like when y'all play some of the Duke Ellington tunes, and I mean, it was like bringing it to ILA with you and then go do a session and all of that. That was my heart. And then we get through with it, whatever we was doing, go over to Willie's gig, and it was like, it was something special and spiritual of the way you could hear two completely different kind of music here that was related. And it was a lot to do with you, Wardell. Your arrangements inspired stuff with Willie. Your arrangements inspired stuff with all of us. I know I tried to rip you off for stuff. I just wasn't an arranger. That's why You know, that's a fact of the matter, because all musicians take stuff from each another. We can't help that.
Gotta do that.
And when you're starting off, at least, that's about all you could do. But when you get to a point, you better figure out what you're gonna do, and don't enroll with something. You know. Go ahead, Wardell. I know you got a maneuver coming up.
I was just resting my back, you know. No, you know, the thing with Dr. John, man, like I said before, he says things, man. See, these two old people up here, man, I would like to be up there with them because they're teaching me a whole lot of stuff in their younger days, and I'm picking up on it now for them, man, from them. But with Dr. John, man, he says things, man, and sometimes he told me one time, man, I hope you're getting your lace. The first thing I do is look in my shoes and see if my lace is tied on my shoe. It took me months before I know what he was talking about. Lace mean money. I hope you're getting your money. If you'd have said that, I would have understood it, man. But with the lace stuff like that, man. Another thing you told me one time and said, man, you see, sprouts, boy, is something else. I said, sprouts. It took me months to learn out what sprouts were. Finally learned out sprouts in his language being children. And then, boy, if you'd have said that if you're children, then I would have been I'd have been in tune with you, man, because I had so many of them myself, you know. But you're such a nice man that I can sit down here and listen at y'all talking about things that I don't know anything about, you know. And I call y'all old, but y'all old in experience than me, not in age. Well, I won't say that either, but I know Bob is up there, man.
Excuse me? Mr. Quzergue? You know, when I was in school, you were teaching. If you remember the people you were playing with Hamp, who taught at St. Aug when I was there, and some of the other folks, you know, who were teachers, Mr. Quzergue, you remember? How is it when you people hit a certain age, you want to go backwards? I got him, he can't say nothing. You can't say a word.
You got me laughing too much, man. Listen to those lies. But no, man, no, when I talk
He used to be a nice man.
No, but honestly, man, when I say age, I don't mean age and age quality. I'm talking about age and experience. I got into the business. I got out the service in 1953, and I think in 1954, I organized the Royal Dukes of Rhythm, and that was from a veteran school of music that we organized at school. You know, the guys that was attending then, and the majority of them was just getting into the school because of the money that the government was giving them. Because, man, I remember when I organized the Royal Dukes of Rhythm, I had to sit down there and point to notes to teach these cats because I was a teacher at the school, you know, teaching cats older than me, really. And I formed the band like Dr. John was saying. The band got to be real popular, and that's when people started hiring me to do arrangements for you know, for sessions like Joe Jones, Dave Bartholomew. They were the first two that got me to do session work, so I grew up that way with them, you know, with that. But there were some bad times and good times. There's some things that you can wish that you never came across in a business, because it's a selfish business in the sense that nobody will, I'm saying nobody, but a lot of the people in the business will not tell you what you deserve to get. They put it in their own pocket, you know, and it take years later for you to say, God darn, if I'd have had that, man, I'd be living in one of them penthouses around there. Not the penthouses that they have around here. But, you know, all in all, man, the people that you run across, you know, like Bob French, Dr. John, George French, and his father. I got to work with his father before I got to work with George, and I never did work with Bob. You know,
Because you were old, that's why you work with him.
yeah, but I worked with your dad, and he was older than me.
I said you were old working with my
I
dad.
thought you said, oh.
Older. Mr. Quzergue.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bob. But I mean, I enjoyed I enjoyed what I did with the people that I did it with. Dr. John and I go back sometime. We did a session, and we always talk about, or every now and then anyway, about something we did with Joe Tex. You remember that, Doc?
Yeah.
We can't get the stuff that we did with Joe Tex, and when nobody can find out where it is. So, and it was it was a night. That's the first time we collaborated with a session, Doc?
It was one of them sessions that it's like something, you did some things with voicings and stuff that was something way different than what was going on at the time, that was like just what you do. But it was like at a time and on a kind of session, but the session was so naturally funky and all of that.
Who was in the horn section?
I think it was pretty much, it wasn't like a date that it's easy to remember, because the saddest part about this session, we ain't never heard it since we cut it. And when you played something, we did 1 million sessions. It's like, how can you remember all of whatever you've done? It's like, it's impossible. But it's sad that there was some music that I was just working on a session for Wardell, but the thing of it, it was like it could have been, it was one of them killer records that Joe Tex never had out. It was some label went under or whatever happened. I don't even know that. I don't think Wardell knows that neither.
I don't even know one of the songs.
But this session was special. We all knew that when we left the studio, because
Right.
one thing about it, when the musicians left a session and they all had a smile on their face, we knew something special went down in the studio.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen all the time. In fact, it didn't happen most of the time. We just did the session and hoped we got paid. And believe me, even with when the musician union had clout, that was no guarantee we was gonna get paid.
No.
And we got, that's how it was.
That's how it was.
Am I telling anything wrong, Mr. French?
You're right, Doctor. Talking about sessions, he did a session, I guess about 2 years ago, right? This, that, and the other.
Oh, yeah.
And you were part of that, weren't you, Wardell?
Yes, I was.
Doc did something that, he does a lot of things that people don't know about. I mean, really, deep down in his heart, he's a nice person. But up here,
Who you talking about, me or Doc?
talking about Doc, not you.
No, boy.
Because Doc is somewhere else, but he came to New Orleans because he's not living here, well, he's living here sort of now, but he's living in New York, on Long Island, am I correct?
That's where.
He lives in Long Island, big time. You know, won't invite me to his house, but it's all right. Anyway, he came down to New Orleans to do this session, this, that, and the other. Smokey Johnson had a stroke many years ago. He was playing with Fats Domino. Smokey's one of the finest drummers who ever picked up a pair of drumsticks. And he had a stroke, he can't use but one hand, and he had diabetes, and he got one of his legs partially cut off. He came down, he got Smokey, he brought him into the studio to play. He got Earl Palmer, brought him in to play. Earl was still all right because Earl got a little very sick after that. Brought Dave Bartholomew in. Who else that you went and got out to?
Wasn't Willie T on that session?
Yeah.
Willie T. And he put it together, and he had Dave to play. What was the one when Dave played? The Monkey Speaks His Mind. Now, Dave right now is 88 years old, so he was well into his 80s then. And to be 80 years old and play the trumpet and get the sound that this man got was completely different. Wardell can tell you because he was the trumpet player.
Oh man, let me tell you something about Dave Bartholomew. But Dave, for the age that he is, he got more chops now than I had when I was 15. I mean, he got chops, man.
I played.
By the way, chops mean he got good tone and good lips. Well, I don't want to be a doctor, John. I'm talking. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, strike it below the belt. Anyway, Dave, I played a gig with Dave about 3 or 4 weeks ago at Preservation Hall. They wanted him to play. And he said, no, I'm not going to play. Then he called me. He said, yeah, I'll play if you hire Bob and let Bob get the band. Because, you know, I wasn't going to put one of them hammock bands together. And we went around and played, and Dr. Iyer was there. A whole bunch of club owners came out because Dave did not play that much because he's very particular about who he plays with and because he got his money. He didn't he got beat some, but Dave did very well for himself because everything that Fats Domino recorded that was a hit, Dave wrote it. Look on the records, look on the old records, on the CDs, and you see D. Bartholomew, it was Dave.